And notice how she starts this one. Like we saw with the beginning, relatively at least, the beginning of Order of the Phoenix, we get kind of immediately presented this idea of there being two separate realities, a wizarding reality and a muggle reality. Okay? And we begin with the other minister. Who is the other minister? Does the other minister refer to the prime minister or to the minister for magic? Well, it depends on whose perspective you're looking at it from. Okay? Notice it's almost midnight. Prime Minister is alone in his office, wrestling with the problems of the day. There's turmoil in London. Okay? Bridge has been destroyed. Freak hurricane in the West Country. Couple of strange murders. And all of a sudden, a little man appears and says to the Prime Minister of Muggles, this is second or third page in, urgent we meet. Kindly respond immediately. Sincerely, Fudge. Not a good time. He says, I'm waiting for a telephone call from the president. That can be arranged. Don't worry about it. So Fudge shows up. Okay? And the Prime Minister says to Fudge, what can I do? How can I help you? And Fudge just stands there, we're told, pulls up a chair, sits down, places his green bowler, his hat, on his knees. What a week, what a week. And I imagine he's sitting there fumbling with this hat, playing with the brim of the hat, because he doesn't really know how to start this conversation off. Why not? He says, what a week, what a week. What has the Prime Minister been thinking of? What a week he's been having. Had a bad one too, have you? Yes, of course. I've been having the same week you have, Prime Minister. The Brockdale Bridge, the Bones and Vance murders. Okay, that's Susan Amelia Bones, Emmeline Vance, one head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, the other a member of the Order of the Phoenix. Okay? Remember we saw in the previous book when Moody pulled out the picture of the old Order of the Phoenix. Okay, we saw a whole bunch of people. Well, now we have a new Order of the Phoenix, and you could say, other than Sirius in the previous book, this is the first death, okay, of this new Order of the Phoenix. How many do we know were either dead or incapacitated in the previous time? 50%. Okay. Not to mention the ruckus in the West Country. You mean to say some of your people were involved in those things, were they? The Prime Minister is coming to understand what Harry came to understand in the beginning of the Order of the Phoenix. His world and the wizarding world are intimately connected. What happens in one has ripple effects in the other. And it's more what happens in the wizarding world has ripple effects in their world. It's not as much what happens in the muggle world has ripple effects in the wizarding world. Okay? So if it's more of one to the other, this is why I think that Rowling is possibly suggesting that the wizarding world can equal, in a sense, okay? I'm not saying it's allegory. Allegory means one-to-one correspondence, okay? But it can equal, in a sense, this idea of a spiritual realm. Because we don't usually talk about, if people talk about quote-unquote spiritual matters, they don't talk about physical things affecting what's going on in the unseen realm. They talk about the exact opposite. Okay? Of course they were. Surely you've realized what's going on. Whenever somebody in the Harry Potter novel says surely, you can almost be certain, nope, it's not that sure. Because whoever they're speaking to never really quite get that. The Prime Minister. No, he hasn't realized. Fudge, it was precisely this sort of behavior that made him dislike Fudge's visit so much. What does he mean, this sort of behavior?
Like talking down to...
Okay, possibly. What else? Yeah, I kind of think, well, I think you're right there.
Just like lack of insight, I guess.
Fudge just sort of assumes that like he knows everyone knows what's common to him is common to everyone.
Common to everyone, meaning what's common in the Muggle, in the Wizarding world, is also commonly understood in the Wizarding world. Yeah. What else?
Fudge only shows up when bad stuff happens.
Yeah. It's not like, hey, I want to come talk to you about problems in how to fix your problems in your. He only shows up when the you know what's hitting the fan just everywhere. Okay. And how does Fudge kind of take responsibility as Minister of Magic? He doesn't. All he says is, yeah, of course we're having the same week. Okay? And so we get a long passage where the Prime Minister mentally goes back to first visit, second visit, third visit, Sirius Black gets loose, Voldemort comes back, so to speak, Voldemort really comes back, etc. And so what's now Fudge here to tell him?
That he's been fired.
Yeah, I'm no longer Prime Minister, and you're going to have another Prime Minister to deal with. Okay? He tells him about the Bones and Vance murders. And the Prime Minister says, but she was just a middle-aged woman who lived alone. Notice the implication there. It's almost like Rowling is saying, middle-aged woman living alone might be a witch. Okay? Fudge, well, of course they are. Of course the police are baffled. Killed in a room, locked from the inside, wasn't she? We know who did it. Okay? So what else is Fudge there for? He's there to tell him, you're going to have protection. Okay? Kingsley Shacklebolt's going to be supplied to you as your own personal bodyguard, so to speak. Scrimgeour shows up. And just before Scrimgeour leaves, the Prime Minister says, but for heaven's sake, you're wizards. You can do magic. Surely you can sort all this out. Scrimgeour. The trouble is, Scrimgeour turns slowly on the spot and exchanged an incredulous look with Fudge, who really did manage a smile this time. As he said kindly, Fudge says this, trouble is, the other side can do magic too. Notice the other side, the dark side. And then we come to chapter 2. Spinner's End. I'm going to write down 3 names before I forget them. Spinner's End. First of all, what is it, literally?
Snape's house.
Okay? It's where Snape's house is. It's the street Snape lives on. Okay? Where does Snape live on this street? The inn. It's like a cul-de-sac. Okay? Dead ends to Snape's house. What else is along this street? Is this a Tony suburb of London? Nice, big, multi-million pound flats? No, this is what? Pretty close. Lower income. What is down all one side? Boarded up buildings. At one point, it's described as a factory. Okay? Snape lives there. Okay? We know, in fact, there's a mill there because the mill stack is described, and all the buildings around are what? Blackened by soot from this mill. Okay? And Snape lives at the end of this house, at the end of the street, in a dingy house. What else about the neighborhood? I mean, just look at the beginning of the chapter. Many miles away, the chilly mist that had pressed against the Prime Minister's windows drifted over a dirty river that wound between overgrown, rubbish-strewn banks. So, dirty river, overgrown, rubbish-strewn. An immense chimney, relic of a disused mill, reared up, shadowy and ominous. No sound apart from the whisper of the black water, and no sign of life apart from a scrawny fox. It's like there is nothing here that gives off life or that adds to life. Even the wildlife is scrawny. Okay? And suddenly, two people appear. Bellatrix and Narcissa Malfoy. Okay? So, a couple pages in, around 2021, I'm reading from the British edition, so the pagination is different. They move ahead and they turn up a street called Spinner's End, over which the towering mill chimney seemed to hover like a giant admonitory finger. Is it this finger, or is it another finger? Her footsteps echoed on the cobbles as she passed boarded and broken windows, until she reached the very last house, where a dim light glimmered through the curtains in a downstairs room. Is this Snape's home that he grew up in? I think it is. We're not given any indication that it is or is not, but we're not given any indication anywhere in the books of any place else that Snape has a home. Because usually he's at Hogwarts. So, they go inside. What are they there for? It's the entire purpose of this chapter. Why isn't it called the Unbreakable Vow? I mean, that's what the chapter's about, right? Narcissa wants Snape to perform the Unbreakable Vow with her to do what? To protect Draco. Okay? What happens if you break an Unbreakable Vow? You die. What is the vow that he swears to her?
Draco can't finish the job, he will.
If Draco can't do it, I will. So, if he doesn't do that, he dies. Well, we can jump to the lightning-struck tower, right there. Almost at the end of the book. Okay? If he doesn't do it, if Draco doesn't do it, and on the lightning-struck tower, Draco doesn't do it, then, according to the Unbreakable Vow, Snape has to. Or he dies. Okay? Back to this title. What's meant by spinners? Is this like a fidget spinner? This is long before those. So what kind of spinner is it? What? Close? What other things spin? Spiders spin. What do they spin? Okay? So this is Spinner's End. What's meant by end? Is it merely, this is the road end, this is the end? Or is it end like ends in means, or a means to an end? Okay. Well, what does that really mean, a means to an end? You develop nuclear weapons for what purpose? Or let me put it this way. Kim Jong-un has developed nuclear weapons for what purpose? To what end? Does he actually intend? Is his purpose to launch them against the United States and ensure North Korea turns into a glass factory? Probably not. Is he crazy enough? Yeah, I think he is. Just, who knows? Talk about fidget spinners, you know. He needs one. He just needs a nice little fidget spinner to calm him down. Right? The end there, when you talk about means and ends, is what? Okay? What is the end of this bottle? It's not this. That's the bottom. So that's the top.
It's to hold water.
It's to hold water. So when you say the end of the bottle is to hold water, what are you talking about?
The goal, purpose.
It's purpose. See? The other meaning of the word end is the purpose of something. Okay? So let's change that to Spinner's purpose. Ah. What's the purpose of this chapter? And who is the spinner? Who's spinning the web? Is it Narcissa? I mean, she thinks she's getting Snape in what? In an unbreakable vow. She thinks she has a lasso around it. He cannot break it. Okay? Who's the other spinner? Bellatrix? Who seems to be calling all the shots, moving all the chess pieces throughout all the novels? Dumbledore. Okay. So, Dumbledore's, notice, end has two meanings. It does have purpose. It's also the final, the completion. So, Dumbledore's purpose. We come to understand later, why is Snape here? Well, I mean, obviously it's his home, but why else is he here? What does the Unbreakable Vow really mean anything to Snape? No, why not? Because before he even makes this Unbreakable Vow, he's already done what? He's made an unbreakable vow. Just not a magical one with Albus Dumbledore. Notice the spinning going on. The webs that are created. Okay? So then what's the end? Well, what's the purpose of the Unbreakable Vow? What is Draco's task? We come to find out later. Kill Dumbledore. Spinner's end. Dumbledore's end. At the beginning of the book. Okay? The Unbreakable Vow, this is after. Okay? How do I know this is after? When did he do this? Well, let me hold off on that. Let's jump to the next chapter, because the next chapter is will and won't. Okay? So let me step back for just a second. It's possible. It's possible Snape and Dumbledore, okay, I just want you to hold this possibility till we get to the very end of book 7, actually. It's possible they haven't yet had their agreement that if it comes to it, Snape will kill Dumbledore. Okay? Might not have been achieved yet. But I think it has for the simple reason that the very next chapter, and there's no indication of time passing between chapter 2 and chapter 3. That is, you don't get any indication 2 weeks have passed or a month has passed or anything like that. Right? What do we see in the next chapter? Well, let me back up for a moment. What else do we find out in Spinner's End? Who doesn't trust Snape? Bellatrix. Why not? She thinks he's Dumbledore's man. Okay? What does Snape suggest she do?
Go talk to everyone about it.
Talk to the Dark Lord. Yeah, you tell the Dark Lord that you think I'm practicing occlumency against him. You know no one can lie to the... So you just run on along and tell him that. What does that do to Bellatrix? Snape shuts her up by saying what? He trusts me. I'm not the one responsible that he doesn't confide all his plans to you. Notice the implication there. He does to me. Okay? Just really angers her beyond all measure. Why? What kind of relationship does Bellatrix think she has with Tom? Is it merely master-servant? No, she thinks there's a little more there. Kind of going on. so will and won't. We get a description. Harry's snoring. We see his room. Typical 16-year-old room. It's a mess. There's an article, Harry Potter, the Chosen One. There's another article, Scrimgeour succeeds Fudge. To the left of this paper, there's another one, bearing a story, Ministry guarantees student safety. And then there's a purple leaflet lying on the floor, issued on behalf of the Ministry of Magic, protecting your home and family against dark forces. What is this? Governmental advice on how to protect yourself against Lord Voldemort. This is like what our government did after 9/11, when they said, you know, in case there's a radioactive bomb, a radiological bomb, a dirty bomb in your area, you know, stock up on some plastic sheeting and duct tape. And be ready to duct tape your windows. Yeah, because that's going to do a hell of a lot of good against gamma radiation. You know, there's a reason they have you put on half-inch lead vests when you go to the dentist, which is supposed to stop the radiation. You know, 0.001 mil plastic is going to stop it better than... In other words, what's the point of this? To make you feel safer. To make you feel safer. Okay? And then we see a note from Dumbledore saying, I'm going to show up at Privet Drive this coming Friday, 11 p.m., to escort you to the Burrow. I need your help on a matter as we make our way there. Okay? So, Harry's all packed. He's ready. He's sitting in his room. And there's the doorbell ringing. Uncle Vernon, who the blazes is calling at this time of night? Harry didn't tell them. Why didn't he tell them?
He didn't believe Dumbledore was coming.
Okay, did he not believe Dumbledore was coming? Possible. What else? Too good to be true? What happened the last time wizards showed up at the Weasley house, at the Dursley house? Yeah, they destroyed the living room. Okay. So Dumbledore stands there. Vernon opens the door. Judging by your look of stunned belief, Harry did not warn you that I was coming, says Dumbledore. However, let us assume that you have invited me warmly into your house. It is unwise to linger overlong on doorsteps in these troubled times. And he just waltzes on in. Okay. Closes the door. Long time since my last visit. Would you really call the last time Dumbledore was there a visit? He dropped a package off. Okay. Vernon says nothing at all. Okay. It might have been the blatant wizardishness of his appearance. Might also have been that Uncle Vernon could sense here was a man whom it would be very difficult to bully. Dumbledore sees Harry. Vernon's, I don't mean to be rude. Yet, sadly, notice Dumbledore cuts him off. He doesn't let him finish. Yet, sadly, accidental rudeness occurs alarmingly often. Best to say nothing at all, my dear man. Oh, and this must be Petunia. What's he mean? Accidental rudeness happens all too often. That's Rowling. That's Rowling getting a zinger in there about people not thinking before they speak. Okay? Kitchen door open, and there stood Harry's aunt wearing rubber gloves. I never really thought about this before. It's kind of weird. And a house coat over her night dress. Clearly halfway through her usual pre-bedtime wipe down of all the kitchen appliances or surfaces. So just before bed, she puts an overcoat on over her nightie, puts on rubber gloves, and goes and sterilizes everything in the kitchen. Clean freak? Okay. Dumbledore says, Albus Dumbledore, when Vernon doesn't say anything, we have corresponded, of course. Really? What kind of correspondence? Is he talking to Vernon or Petunia? Now, he's actually talking to Vernon here. How's he corresponded? He left a letter with Harry on Harry's basket when he dumped Harry on their doorstep. And how else? The Howler. Okay? At the beginning of the previous book. 2 letters. Okay? And this must be your son Dudley. His large blonde head, rising out of the stripy collar of his pajamas, looked oddly disembodied, his mouth gaping in astonishment and fear. Shall we assume that you have invited me into your sitting room? Because they obviously haven't. Dudley gets out of the way. Harry, aren't we leaving? Not yet, Harry. Okay. So, he says, we shall trespass upon your aunt and uncle's hospitality only a little longer. You will you? Vernon found his voice. Yes, said Dumbledore, I shall. He draws his wand, flicks it. The sofa zooms over behind all the Dursleys, so they fall into it. He says, we might as well be comfortable. And he says, I'm going to assume you're going to offer me a drink. And suddenly, there are drinks available. What do the drinks do to Vernon after a while? Yeah, the glass is sitting there, and it starts knocking him on the head. Why? Because he hasn't drunk it. And Dumbledore says, it just would have been more polite to drink it. So, Dumbledore explains why he's really there. Because Sirius is dead, Harry now owns everything that Sirius owned, including Creature. But he has to make sure that the will is, so to speak, in effect. So he calls Creature to them, and Harry gives Creature an order. Creature says, won't. Creature won't. I don't know what page this is. Quite as loudly as Uncle Vernon does. Creature won't go to the Potter brat. Creature won't. Dumbledore says, see, Harry, so, give him an order. Harry gives him an order, and even though he doesn't want to, Creature obeys. Okay? So that's taken care of. So, they also have to deal with Buckbeak. Buckbeak gets sent off to Hagrid. And that's even worse than before. So finally, Dumbledore says, okay, all that's taken care of. Now just one more thing. As you're not unaware, Harry comes of age in a year's time. He's 16 now. He'll be 17 next year. Petunia says no. He's a month younger than Dudley. Dudley won't be 18 for 2 years. Dumbledore, well, that's okay, because in the wizarding world, you become an adult at 17. Vernon, I knew there was something wrong with it. So, Dumbledore says, Voldemort's back, you know this. Harry's in even greater danger now than he was when I left him here 15 years ago. With the letter explaining about his parents' murder and expressing the hope that you would care for him as though he were your own son. Pause. Why? He wants to let that sink in. You did not do as I asked. Now, that could be taken ominously. That here's a very powerful wizard. Petunia knows something about Dumbledore. And he says, you did not do as I asked. You have never treated Harry as a son. He's known nothing but neglect and often cruelty at your hands. Best that can be said is that he has at least escaped the appalling damage you have inflicted upon the unfortunate boy sitting between you. They look at Dudley. Dudley looks at them. Dudley doesn't know what they're talking about. He's like, me? Huh? What? What's the appalling damage they've inflicted upon Dudley? Say that again. The baby, Luke. Obese thing. Okay, he's not obese anymore. Spoiled him. Would Dudley be able to throw off an imperious curse? Wow. An imperious curse after 100 tries? Nope. Why? He has no strength of character. He'd try and beat up the wizard doing it, but he's never suffered. He's never gone without. He's never overcome any adversity. Us mistreat debtors. Here's another little name Harry can think of next time he's around Big D, you know. The magic I evoked 15 years ago means that Harry has powerful protection while he can still call this house home. This magic will cease to operate the moment Harry turns 17. In other words, when he becomes a man. I ask only this. Really, is this a request? Let Harry come home one more time before his 17th birthday. When is that one more time? Next summer. Did Harry ever come home during the school holidays? No, he doesn't. Okay? None of the Dursleys say anything. Dudley's frowning, still trying to work out how he's been mistreated. Uncle Vernon looked as though he had something stuck in his throat. Aunt Petunia, however, was oddly flushed. Why? What is she feeling?
He's embarrassed.
Embarrassment? Shame? Maybe remorse? All right. So he and Harry go off. They go to Horace Slughorn's, which I'm going to skip most of, and they convince Slughorn to come back to Hogwarts as a teacher. Now, what is Harry probably assuming about Slughorn? He's going to be a defense against the dark arts. Why? Because they always have a new one. It's the cursed job, Jinx job. He's probably also thinking, therefore, sucker, because you're going to be gone after a year. And he and Dumbledore make their way to the Burrow. And they stop there at the Weasley's barn for a moment, outside the gate. And Dumbledore tells him, I'm pleased and a little proud of how well you seem to be coping after everything that happened at the Ministry. I think Sirius would have been proud of you. Harry swallows. Notice, Dumbledore goes on, because Harry can't form words yet. It was cruel that you and Sirius had such a short time together, a brutal ending to what should have been a long and happy relationship. Harry, it's just hard. Notice, low voice. Why? Almost ready to break. To realize he won't write to me again. His eyes burn suddenly. He blinks because there's tears. Dumbledore, Sirius represented much to you that you had never known before. Represented what? Love? Father? Family? Harry, while I was at the Dursleys, I realized I can't shut myself away or crack up. Sirius wouldn't have wanted that, would he? Anyway, life's too short. Look at Madame Bones. Look at Emmeline Vance. It could be me next, couldn't it? But if it is, this is page 77, he says fiercely, now looking straight into Dumbledore's blue eyes, gleaming in the wanlight. If it is me next, what? I'll make sure I take as many Death Eaters with me as I can. And Voldemort too, if I can manage it. In other words, I'm going to mix a whole bunch of metaphors here. He's going to take his lightsaber and he's going to modify that sucker into an Uzi lightsaber. So he's going to take out as many Death Eaters, you know, with the Avada Kedavra. And yet, when we see Harry actually battle Death Eaters, when we saw him in the previous book, did he try Avada Kedavra? No. Did he try an unforgivable curse? No. Yes, he did. On Bellatrix Lestrange. He got her too. He hit her. He stopped her for a few seconds until she said, never done one of those, have you, boy? You have to what?
Yeah, mean it.
You gotta mean it. Meaning, you got to enjoy it. You've got to get off on causing pain to somebody else. Here, let me show you, she says. You know, tells us a lot about Bellatrix. He is going to do an Avada Kedavra, not Avada Kedavra, he's going to do a Cruciatus Curse later on in book 7. And he's going to go, oh, now I understand. Wow, that feels good. because he really wants to inflict pain in that instance. And you could say it's quote-unquote a righteous instance, because Bellatrix says, righteous anger won't hurt me for long. And yet when Harry does use it, it is righteous anger that fuels it. Somebody insulted McGonagall. And he's like, how dare you? She's like, Potter, how gallant of you, He says, I'm going to take as many out as I can. How many Death Eaters does Harry take out in the course of the entire 7 books? 0. How many does he try to take out? 0. What's the most he does? Cruciatus Curse. What's the next most? Either Expelliarmus or Petrificus Totalis, or one of those Impedimenta charms. That's it. Stops them dead in their tracks, or knocks their wands out of their hands. Dumbledore, spoken both like your father and mother's son, and Sirius's true godson. In other words, way to go, Harry, let's go kill him. All manly and macho. I take my hat off to you. Okay? Does Dumbledore mean all of that? I think he does mean it. Yes, Harry, that is spoken like James would speak. Probably when James was 16. And a bit of a ass. Spoken like Sirius would speak when? In 32, or however old he was when he died. Oh, come on, you could do better than that. Wham! Gets nailed right square in the chest. Got a little bit too cocky. And Bellatrix took him out. Okay? So Dumbledore goes on. Says, am I correct in thinking you haven't told anybody about the prophecy? No. Wise. But you can tell Ron and Hermione. He says, you do them a disservice by not confiding something this important to them. I didn't want to worry or frighten them. You need your friends, Harry. Well, he should know that already, right? Book 1, trapdoor, goner. He wouldn't have gotten through the trapdoor because he didn't know there was a trapdoor. Hermione's the one who points that out. And then everything else that follows. All right? So, Dumbledore says, you're also going to get a little greater, I'm going to have a greater hand in your education. What will you be teaching me, sir? Well, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. What's going through Harry's mind probably when Dumbledore says, I'm going to take a greater hand in your education? Going to teach me how to do that flip, that thing with your wrist that makes that lasso go around the room of death? Because that's some pretty cool stuff. Are you going to teach me how to do some of those things against Voldemort? Because notice, in the battle against Voldemort, Dumbledore never uses Avada Kedavra. He doesn't try to kill him at the end of Order of the Phoenix. In fact, Voldemort even says, you're not trying to kill me, what, too noble? What does Dumbledore say? No, Tom, not too noble. But death isn't the worst thing. In other words, I've got something worse in mind than death. Ooh, that tells you Dumbledore's, you really don't want to get him pissed at you. What is he maybe thinking? Dementor's kiss? So Tommy Riddle is still around, but, all he does now is play with finger paint, because there's nothing yet behind the windows, so to speak. If I'm having lessons with you, I won't have to do occlumency lessons with Snape, will I? Professor Snape, Harry. And he's going to say that like half a dozen times in the course of the novel. Harry's going to say, Snape, Professor Snape, Harry. All right. Dumbledore, no, I think that was a fiasco. So, excess of phlegm. Okay. Which I'm going to skip most of. get to where they get their owls. Page 102. Ordinary wizarding levels. Okay? These are the 5th year exams. 7th year they take their newts, their nastily exhaustive wizarding tests. So, you get their grade scales. O is outstanding, E exceeds expectations, A acceptable, failing grades, P for poor, D for dreadful, and T for troll. Notice, astronomy, acceptable. Care of magical creatures, why just acceptable? What happened during Harry's astronomy exam? Hagrid was attacked, McGonagall went out to save him, she was attacked. In other words, he was a little distracted, okay? But he still gets an acceptable. Care of magical creatures, exceeds expectations. Think about that grade for a moment. Exceeds expectations. Whose expectations? Is there some written set of expectations by the Ministry of Magic Department of Education that says they all have to meet? Or are the expectations set by each instructor? In which case, Potions, Snape, what kind of expectations does he really have for most of his students? What does he say first day of class to Harry and the others, first year? If you're not as all a bunch of dunderheads as I think you are, in other words, if you're not a bunch of complete morons, well, it doesn't take much to prove you're not a complete moron. You know, if you can write your name with looped letters, as Lockhart puts it. So when Harry exceeds expectations, maybe that just means Snape had such low expectations for Harry. He exceeded them. Charms, same. Defense against the dark arts, outstanding. Why? Patronus. He takes his exam and the teacher goes, the examiner goes, have I heard you could do it? Harry's like, yeah. Show me for bonus. What's he do? He looks at Snape. Okay? Sorry, he looks at Umbridge and produces it. And the examiner about wets himself. He's so excited. Divination. Poor darn. Herbology, E. History of magic, dreadful. Why? He passed out, fell asleep, had a vision, woke up, all freaked out. Potions, E. Transfiguration, E. So only gets one O. But it also happens to be the one that he spent the previous year doing what? Teaching everybody else. Okay? So, Draco's Detour, they go on to Alley. Diagon Alley to buy school supplies, go by Fred and George's shop and stuff. And Harry, Ron, and Hermione follow Malfoy, and they see Malfoy and his father going to Borgin and Burke's. And Harry wants to try to figure out what it is Malfoy's getting from Borgin and Burke's, but he can't find out. Okay, they get on the train. I'm skipping a bunch, obviously. And Harry sits down in the compartment, and there's Luna, there's Neville. And Harry gets a note from Slughorn. It says, join me in compartment C. Harry goes up to compartment C. And who's there? Let's see. Neville gets the same thing. Harry goes up. There's Slughorn. There's Neville. There is Blaise Zabini. Okay. Cormac McLagan. Marcus Belby. Ginny. Why is Ginny there? Yeah, the Bat Hoagie Hex. What Bat Bogey Hex? Why is Neville there? Is it solely because of his parents? Is it because of his grandmother? Or has word also kind of spread? Who else else is there? Luna's there. Except Ron's not there. Hermione's there because she knows everything. Okay, but Ron's not there. But Ron was at the Department of Mysteries, at the Ministry of Magic. What is the Slug Club? What's its purpose? Collection of what? Notable people. Smart students. Influential students. How can the students be influential? I mean, Slughorn's older than dirt. He's been around a long time. He's got connections.
He's investing.
He's investing. In other words, these are the students of what? Who are going to be great, who are going some places, who are going to open doors in the future. In other words, like Luke said, he's putting a few dollars in now so that he can pull a few hundred out later. When they get powerful, he can kind of pull on those connections. Okay? Yeah, get them while they're young. What else is he doing, though? Oh, I didn't even mention those things. Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos are the names of the three fates in Greek mythology. Clotho weaves the thread of your life. Lachesis measures the thread of your life. And Atropos clips the thread of your life when it's time for you to die. Okay? Three spinners, what they're sometimes referred to as. So, Harry leaves the Slug Club, puts on his invisibility cloak, and goes where? Draco's compartment. Sneaks in behind Zabini and does what? Climbs up into the luggage rack so that he can overhear Draco's conversation with the other Slytherins. Why? He's still trying to figure out what it is Draco's trying to sneak into Hogwarts. And what happens? Yeah, because he accidentally lets part of the cloak slip off, so Draco sees him for a second. And when everybody else clears out, notice, Draco, Petrificus Totalis. Without warning, Draco Malfoy pointed his wand at Harry, who is instantly paralyzed. But he's got the cloak on. Does it or does it not? Because at one point she says it does protect from spells. And it keeps you hidden. And yet, Mad-Eye Moody,
I think it protects from spells because it keeps you hidden.
okay,
So
I think she hadn't decided what the cloak was going to do yet.
I think you can summon the cloak away from him.
okay, you can't go Oxio Cloak and it leaves somebody. But Mad-Eye Moody can see right through it. How good is an invisibility cloak if somebody with a magical eye can see right through it? Okay? Just seems to me like there's a little problem here. So, Malfoy does Petrificus Totalis, which usually what happens to somebody when that's done to them. I mean, we see it happen to Neville a couple of times. And what happens? Hands go straight by his side, legs go like this, and then he falls backward. Why does he fall backward? Lack of balance. Where is Harry? He's lying flat on a luggage rack. Why in the world does he fall off? It's not like he's leaning way over so that if he's leaning way over, his arms go like this, boom, he falls. No, train's in station. And notice, the luggage is all gone. So Harry's got this whole rack. The rack is big enough to hold a couple of students' trunks. These are not little overnight, 14 by 21 by 9-inch suitcases. These are big, like steamer trunks. 3 feet long, 2 feet wide, 1.5 foot to 2 feet deep. 2 of them, side by side. So the rack is probably at the minimum the length of these 3 desks, which is longer than 6 feet. Harry's not longer than 6 feet. Daniel Radcliffe ain't even close. Right? So he could curl up in a ball with somebody else if he wanted to there. It doesn't make sense that he falls. Is my only point. Okay? So he does fall. Malfoy says a few things to him, and then he does what? Yes?
Well, actually, going back to the train thing, I think he hears it. Like, Malfoy turns around and goes, like, Patricia goes to tell us. But Harry hears the start of it, so I think he's trying to dodge. And he gets hit with it on the way down, so I think that's why he falls.
Could be, but that's not the description. Petrificus totalis. Without warning, Malfoy pointed his wand at Harry, who was instantly paralyzed. As though in slow motion, he toppled out of the luggage rack and fell at Malfoy's feet, with the invisibility cloak trapped around him. And then what does Malfoy do? He doesn't just go up and... He stomps on his face. You got to get the violence of that action down. So that his nose is splat, all right? And then he's just lying there with the cloak over him, with the blood just dripping down his face and into his mouth and stuff. And lying there and thinking, how long? How long will I stay here? And notice, and when Malfoy leaves, what does he do? Does he step over Harry? He steps on his fingers. At least he doesn't stomp on him. Okay? And Tonks comes and rescues him. Why? Because she didn't see Harry get off the train. So she was curious. So she walks Harry up to the school. She fixes his face. He's kind of like, well, I'm not so sure. Last time a wizard tried to fix him, other than Madame Pomfrey, he ended up with no arm. Yeah, no bones in his arm. And so she leads him up to Snape, who meets Harry at the gates. Harry doesn't like Snape. We're told whatever Dumbledore had said, Harry had had time to think over the summer and had concluded Snape's snide remarks to Sirius about remaining safely hidden, while the rest of the Order of Phoenix were fighting Voldemort, had probably been a powerful factor in Sirius rushing off to the Ministry the night that he had died. What's Harry doing? He's rationalizing. It's Harry's fault that Sirius came. It's not Snape's. Harry clung to this notion. Why? Because it enabled him to blame Snape, which felt satisfying. And because he also knew that if anyone was not sorry that Sirius was dead, it was Snape. And as they make their way up, Snape goes, okay, let's see, 50 points from Gryffindor for lateness. And let's see, 20 for your muggle attire. I don't believe any house has ever begun in negative figures. You might have set a record, Potter. The fury and hatred bubbling inside Harry seemed to blaze white hot, and he would rather have been immobilized all the way back to London than to tell Snape why he was late. Do you think Snape might not know? After all, what did Harry never practice? Occlumency. Now, Dumbledore told Harry at the end of the previous book, in the end, it didn't matter that Harry never learned occlumency. Why? Because Voldemort couldn't take control of him because of Harry's power or ability to love. But that doesn't apply to Snape. It's like Harry doesn't even think. Can Snape practice legilimency without having his wand out and without going, Legilimens? Yes, he can. We're going to see it, in fact, later on. But Malfoy's going to say, stop doing that. I know what you're trying to do. And he's going to say, your Aunt Bellatrix has been teaching you occlumency, I see. Okay? So, Harry gets up to school. Dumbledore explains how dangerous and precarious things are. Tells students, stay in your rooms, don't go wandering around the school at night and such. And we get Chapter 9, the Half-Blood Prince. And the students are going over their schedules and the new classes they'll take. Notice, they don't begin the term knowing exactly all of their classes. Okay? So for some of them, they may not have books that they need. Harry with potions. He doesn't think he's going on to potions because Snape doesn't take exceeds expectations. You have to have outstanding. So we see McGonagall and Neville around, I don't know, 173 or so. And so McGonagall's talking to Neville about his owls and such. And Neville wants to continue in Transfiguration, her class. She says, sorry, Longbottom, acceptable really isn't good enough to continue to Newt level. I don't think you'd be able to do the coursework. He hangs his head. Why do you want to continue? Grandmother wants. It's high time your grandmother learned to be proud of the grandson she's got, rather than the one she thinks she ought to have. And then she gets in a zinger, particularly after what happened at the ministry. What's McGonagall mean by that?
She's recognizing them.
This is McGonagall. Doing what? Way to go, Neville. You showed some, real guts there. Neville turns pink. Why? Because he's embarrassed. And blinks confusedly. McGonagall had never paid him a compliment before. I'm sorry, Longbottom, cannot let you into my new class. She says, but you haven't exceeds expectations in charms. Why don't you go on in charms? Grandmother thinks charms is a soft option. Take charms. And then she does something she shouldn't do. And I shall drop Augusta a line reminding her that just because she failed her charms, Owl, the subject is not necessarily worthless. Now, that tells us a couple of things. One, do you remember how long McGonagall's been teaching at Hogwarts? 40, well, in the previous book, 49 years. So she's in her 50th year. How old is Neville's grandmother? No. No. Young enough, probably, to have taken classes under McGonagall. Okay? McGonagall, she's been here for 50 years. We don't know that means that she started teaching when she is 25, so she's 75. Okay? But Neville's grandmother was probably there as a student when McGonagall was there teaching. Okay? What else has she done? She violated what in the United States, at least, is what's called the FERPA law, Federal Educational Rights Privacy Act. One of your parents calls me, Dr. Sherman, I don't like the grade you gave my son, Luke. I would say, can't talk to you about it, and hang up. Unless I have a signed piece of paper from you, specific piece of paper from you that says you can talk to my parents about my grades, I can't talk to your parents about your grades, even if they're paying everything. Too bad. Why? You're 18. That's it. If you were 17 and in this class, I could spill the beans. Yeah, well, she never comes to class, or he doesn't do the quizzes, or he sits there and plays on his computer the whole class. You ought to, go outside and beat the hell out of him. But I can't, usually. But apparently they don't have this rule. So she's just told Neville, you exceed expectations in charms, and your grandmother failed. We don't know how she failed. Did she get poor, dreadful, or was she a troll when it came to charms? What does this do immediately for Neville? I'm better than Gran. And at least one thing. Because how did we see her compare him to his parents in the previous book? Yeah, he'll never have the ability. He doesn't have the ability his father had. Well, yeah, maybe he does. Maybe he's just, in that book, 15, and before then, 14, 13, 12. In other words, maybe she's comparing him as an early teenager with his father as a fully grown, fully qualified Auror wizard. I doubt his father had all those abilities when he was 11, 12, 13, 14 either. Smiling slightly at the look of delighted incredulity on Neville's face, Professor McGonagall tapped a blank timetable with the tip of her wand and handed it, now carrying details of his new classes, to Neville. What do we see happen with Neville concurrently with Harry all throughout the books? Louder? Growth? Okay. They could easily be what?
Siblings.
Okay. What else? Neville Potter and the Half-Blood. Neville Longbottom and the Half-Blood Prince. Neville Longbottom and the Deathly Hallows.
He could have been the second one.
But he wasn't chosen. That's it. Voldemort chose Harry and not Neville. Okay? But we see Neville develop. What baggage does Neville not have that Harry has? The chosen one, the boy who lived, parents killed by, almost. Okay. So Neville gets to develop kind of in obscurity. I mean, do we really see, frankly, a whole lot of Neville in books 1 through 4? No. It's in book 5 where Neville kind of, boom. He doesn't expel Expelliarmus. Okay, Harry's got his back to him. It's almost like his wand's in his pocket, totally unarmed. But at the Ministry of Magic, what does Neville do? He fights. He doesn't give up, even when he's wounded, disabled. He keeps going, okay? Showing his courage. And we're going to see in book 7, what does Neville do? Okay, what else? At the end. Yeah, it's finally Neville who enables Harry to do what Harry must do. Without Neville, it wouldn't have happened. All right? So, the Half-Blood Prince, middle of the chapter, 177 or so. How far do I want to get? Oh, yeah, no problem. They go off, finally, to Defense Against the Dark Arts with Snape. Okay? Now, what should they be thinking? That beginning of the year feast, which we've already gone past, and Dumbledore introduces Snape as the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. What should be one of the first thoughts in Harry's mind? Yes, he'll be gone next year. Because have we ever had a Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher move into a different position? No. So we ought to be thinking, one more year, and I'm done with Snape. Okay? So they go into their first class, and people look at the walls, and there's pictures of body parts and all kinds of gruesome stuff. Okay? Snape says, as Hermione starts to open her book, I have not asked you to take out your books. I wish to speak to you, and I want your fullest attention. You have had 5 teachers in this subject so far, I believe. Harry, you believe, like you haven't watched them all come and go, Snape, hoping you'd be next. Naturally, these teachers will all have had their own methods and priorities. Methods and priorities. Quirrell. Do we ever really hear anything about Quirrell as a teacher? Not really. We don't learn much about Quirrell as teacher. Lockhart. He's not a teacher. He's in love with himself, and everything he does is a lie. Okay. Lupin. Good teacher. How do we know? Not because of their dealing with kappas and red horn crackles and all the things that, Luna makes up, as well as the other things, the actual magical creatures, but because he teaches Harry how to do the Patronus charm. That tells us he's a good teacher. Okay? What comes after Lupin? Barty Crouch Jr., a.k.a. Mad-Eye Moody. No matter what you say about Barty Crouch Jr., as Mad-Eye Moody, he's a pretty good teacher. I mean, they learn an awful lot. Umbridge. Nothing. absolutely nothing. She's the worst of the bunch. She's worse than Lockhart. Okay? So, methods and priorities. Given this confusion, I'm surprised so many of you have scraped an owl in this subject. Well, why did they? Because Harry has been teaching them all of these defensive spells for the last year. I shall be even more surprised if all of you manage to keep up with the new work, which will be much more advanced. So now he walks around and he drops his voice. Why? This is a teaching method. To make the students listen even harder. Real low voice. The dark arts are many, varied, ever-changing, and eternal. Eternal. Eternal means eternal. They don't end, they don't stop. Fighting them is like fighting a many-headed monster when each time a neck is severed, sprouts a head even fiercer and cleverer than before. The Hydra. You are fighting that, the dark arts, which is unfixed, mutating, indestructible. It's unfixed, meaning you don't know what form it will take. It's mutating. You might expect it to take one form, and like a virus, it mutates into something else. And it is what? Indestructible. If it's indestructible, what does that ultimately mean? You can't win. Okay, if you can't win, why fight? I mean, if Snape is right, Harry stared at Snape. It was surely one thing to respect the dark arts as a dangerous enemy, another to speak of them as Snape was doing, with a loving caress in his voice. Like Snape was going, oh, if you only knew the power of the dark side, you would, which is kind of what's implied there. So Snape says, your defenses must therefore what? Be as flexible and inventive as the arts you seek to undo. In other words, your defenses must be like what? Harry at the Ministry of Magic. Harry, Ron, Hermione, Neville, Luna, and Ginny. Do they use the exact same curses every time? No, they don't. Okay. Harry does tend to, however, use one thing. Expelliarmus. It's going to become a bone of contention in the next book between Harry and Lupin. It's going to become really important, in fact. Okay? So he says, these are pictures that tell you what happens under, for example, a Cruciatus curse, or the Dementor's kiss, or if you make a Inferius angry at you. Parvati. Hasn't Inferius been seen then? The Dark Lord has used Inferi in the past. No reason why he shouldn't now. Okay? So, he gives them a task, and he walks around. Ron's supposed to be jinxing Harry, doesn't do it well. Snape says, pathetic, Weasley. Here, let me show you, because he's just looking forward to a reason to hex Harry, or to jinx him. He turns his wand on Harry so fast, Harry reacted instinctively. What are they supposed to be working on? Nonverbal spells. Harry reacts, notice, instinctively. And he yells, Protego! Not nonverbal. His shield charm was so strong, Snape was knocked off balance and hit a desk. Whole class looks around. In other words, they're looking around going, you jinxed the teacher. Do you remember me telling you we are practicing nonverbal? Yes. Yes, sir. Snape says, no need to call me sir, Professor. So he does the Protego verbally, and then he smarts off. Okay? Ron, Dean, and Seamus grin as they're behind Snape. Detention, Saturday night, in my office. I do not take cheek from anyone, Potter, not even the chosen one. Okay? Only problem is, he doesn't have to go to detention Saturday night, does he? No, because that just happens to be the first night Harry's going to sit down with Dumbledore. So he goes off to potions with Slughorn, doesn't have a book, Slughorn says, go over there to the bookcase, push his textbook out. And Harry just reaches in and pulls one out. There's more than one there. And the one he pulls out happens to have written on the back of it, this book is the property of Half-Blood Prince. And what does this book enable Harry to do? Yeah. Exceeds expectations. Outstanding. Okay? And we come to find out who it belonged to. The question I always have is, how does it end up there? Well, yeah, it's his classroom. So does he just leave his own personal copy of textbooks? Which is kind of odd.
He could have forgot about it.
Could have forgotten about it.
I think he put it
Maybe he donated it.
Could be he donated it to the school. But just work with me for a minute. It's full of what?
Dark spells.
It's full of his own creations. I mean, it's got his own snake-made spells in here. Many of which, as Hermione will say, are what? Yeah. They're illegal, man. I mean, they may not be unforgivable spells, but they're not things students ought to be practicing on each other. Like when Harry's there in bed one night and he does a Levi Corpus on Ron. And Ron's screaming at the top of his lungs, and Harry's like, oh my God, where's the counter spell? Oh, here it is. Libera Corpus. Drops them down. Or he uses, a few pages later, he uses a hex on Crabbe as he's walking down the hallway. Anybody remember what the hex does? Makes his toenails grow very, very fast. So he's walking and he starts, because the toenails are sticking against the inside of his shoes. That's cruel, man. There's just no other way to describe it. That's cruel. Sounds like dear old dad. All right? So, he goes off to Dumbledore for his first lesson. And Dumbledore tells him what they're going to be doing. First part of the lessons, at least, are going to be trips down memory lane. And Dumbledore says, I've decided it's time now that you know what prompted Lord Voldemort to try and kill you 15 years ago, for you to be given certain information. There's a pause, and Harry kind of says, you told me all that at the end of last term. Notice, it was hard to keep a note of accusation from his voice. And then you get, sir. Harry's like, you said you told me all that. Sir. Does Dumbledore catch the little note in Harry's voice? Yes. And so I did. I told you everything I know. From this point forth, we're leaving the firm foundation of fact and journeying together through the murky marshes of memory into thickets of wildest guesswork. Harry, but you think you're right. That's a pretty stupid question, right? How many times do you have an idea where you have the idea and you immediately think, well, this is wrong, and yet you keep the idea? Usually, most people, they come up with an idea. If they know it's wrong, they immediately what? I don't mean wrong morally. Like, I'm going to rob this bank. Well, no, I shouldn't do that. And so they completely change their mind. If you're a bank robber, you think, no, I'm going to rob this bank. Well, that's wrong. Well, I don't give a damn because I want the money and they have it. Okay? It's not that kind of. Harry, you think you're right. Dumbledore, naturally I do. In other words, you come up with an idea, you think it's a good idea. That's it. You just keep going. But, Dumbledore says, I make mistakes. Like the next man. What's one of the mistakes Dumbledore has made? Yeah, it's hard to come up with one, isn't it?
Staying away from Harry the previous year.
Okay, staying away from Harry the previous year. Not teaching him occlumency himself. What else? Loving Harry too much. Being too concerned of Harry's happiness than for his own plan. Okay? But, he says, problem is, when I make mistakes, being rather cleverer than most men, my mistakes tend to be correspondingly huger. Harry, and this will help me with the prophecy, right? It'll help me survive. It has very great deal to do with the prophecy. I hope it'll help you survive. So, they come up to the pensive, and Harry's kind of like, no, it's okay. You're going with me. In other words, you're permitted now. All the other times he's looked into a pensive, they've been what? Mental rape. I mean, mental rape. He's taken something from somebody else that he shouldn't be doing. Okay? So, where are we going? Trip down Bob Ogden's memory lane. Who's Bob Ogden? Works for the Ministry of Magic. Okay? Yeah. He's the one who shows up at Marvolo Gaunt's house, and what does Morphin do to him? Zaps him. Okay? So Bob Ogden comes back later on with a whole bunch of wizards. Okay? And what does Harry see while Bob Ogden is there? When he's talking with Marvolo and Morphin and the girl, Merope. Gaunt says, "My daughter, Merope," as Ogden looked inquiringly towards her. "Good morning." She doesn't answer. She looks at her father with a frightening glance. Ogden says, "Well, Mr. Gaunt, your son performed magic in front of a muggle late last night." Deafening clang. Merope had dropped one of the pots. Right? Mr. Gaunt, please. Because he's not treating Merope very nicely. So Harry and Dumbledore witness all of this. They witness how Merope is treated. They witness Morphin talk about Merope loving this muggle, or liking how he looks at least. And they're talking, Morphin and Marvolo, in Parseltongue. So page 211. Dumbledore says, "That's enough, Harry." And they come out of the memory. What happened to the girl in the cottage? It's the first thing out of Harry's mouth. He doesn't ask, what does this have to do with me and the prophecy? Which you would think he'd be kind of concerned with. What happened to the girl in the cottage? Merope, or whatever her name was. Oh, she survived. Marvolo, who had injured several ministry employees in addition to Ogden, received 6 months at Azkaban. Morphin, who already had a record of muggle attacks, got 3 years in Azkaban. Notice this is before what? I'm assuming. It's before the Dementors are in Azkaban. Because normally what happens to people if they go to Azkaban? Yeah, you go and you stay. And the Dementors, at least when Sirius is there, the Dementors suck all happiness out of you and you go crazy. He doesn't go crazy because he doesn't have any happiness in him. Because he knows I'm here wrongly. Okay? Harry, Marvolo. That's right. Glad to see you're keeping up. That old man was Voldemort's grandfather, yes. Marvolo, his son Morphin, his daughter Merope were the last of the Gaunts. Very ancient. So, Merope, she was Voldemort's mother? Yep. We also saw Voldemort's father. Did you see him? The Muggle, the Muggle Morphin attack, the man on the horse. Very good indeed. That was Tom Riddle Sr., the handsome Muggle who used to go riding past the Gaunt cottage, and for whom Merope Gaunt cherished a secret burning passion. Harry, and they ended up married? Because describe the two of them. I have no idea that J.K. Rowling intends this. But I think Tom Riddle Sr. is kind of like Clark Gable gone with the wind. I mean, dressed to the nines, dressed to kill, and handsome. as all get up. And she sees him and she's like, and I can do some magic with that. And she does. And Maripay's what? Is Maripay ugly? Is she your prototypical, your Disney witch? You know, long nose, wart, eye, one up here, one sagging down here, you know. No, she's not. But she is what? What happens to people, not just women, men too, who live exceptionally hard lives early on? Yeah, they're weathered. They age early. I've seen 20-year-olds who look 50. Okay, just because they've lived 50 years in those 20 years. Harry said in disbelief, unable to imagine two people less likely to fall in love. In Dumbledore, you're forgetting Maripay was a witch. I do not believe her magical powers appear to their best advantage when she is being terrorized by her father. Once they were away, what happened? She kind of took control of herself. She cleaned herself up a little bit. She was alone and free, gave full rein to her abilities, plotted her escape. Can you not think of any measure Maripay could have taken to make Tom Riddle forget his Muggle companion? Do you think Dumbledore knows what is going on in each of the classrooms in Hogwarts? Such as, for example, what Harry learned in his first potions class? What did they make? A love potion. Felix Felicis comes later. All right? Well, they do that one too. But he also makes a love potion so that Harry says, what do you think first? Imperious curse. That would work, right? Imperial, you love me. Only problem with Imperious curse is what? Think Barty Crouch Jr. and Sr. You can throw it off eventually, so you have to keep doing it. Well, apparently you have to keep doing it also with the love potion. All right? Harry, Imperious curse, or a love potion. Dumbledore, very good. We're going to see a love potion later on in the book, right? Romilda Vane makes those chocolates for Harry. Okay? A whole box of them. Gives them to him for Christmas. Harry chucks them on the floor in his room. 3 months later, Ron eats them for his birthday. Ew. Like Whitman chocolates, I guess, you know. Will never rot. Yeah, it's really bad stuff. Dumbledore, very good. I think she did use a love potion. I'm sure it would have seemed more romantic to her. I do not think it would have been very difficult. Some hot day, Riddle's riding along, give him a drink of water. And he runs off with her. Okay? He says, Dumbledore goes on, he never mentioned her name or existence from that time forth. That is Tom Riddle. That is when he came back, Maripay, she died, didn't she? Wasn't Voldemort brought up in an orphanage? Yeah, but we got to do a little more guessing here, Harry. Within a few months of their runaway marriage, Tom Riddle reappeared at the manor house in Little Hangleton without his wife. Okay? So, ran off, got married, a few months, came back. The rumor went around that he had been hoodwinked. What he meant by that, Dumbledore says, is the enchantment was lifted. Harry, but she did have his baby. Yeah, but not until a year after they were married. So, they got married. 3 months in, she conceives. We're not told exactly how many months after they were married that Tom Riddle returned. Dumbledore says within a few. I think a few is somewhere within 3 to 6. It's very likely Tom Riddle discovers his wife is pregnant, and she, as Dumbledore is going to say, thinking, because I now am bearing his child, he will love me, and stops giving him the love potion. And as soon as the love potion wears off, he bolts. Okay? He goes back, and she's now all alone to raise this child. Is there any relevance of this to J.K. Rowling's personal biography? Oh, yeah. It's like autobiography. And I don't know that she intends that, but it's almost impossible not to read it that way. Because J.K. Rowling went off to Portugal to teach English, I think it was for Amnesty International. She meets this dashing young Portuguese journalist, if I remember correctly, looks like Antonio Banderas when he was young and hot. Okay? Falls madly in love with him. Whirlwind romance. They are married within like 3 months. Okay? She gets pregnant, and within like 6 months, he leaves her. And she goes back to Scotland. Unmarried now, pregnant, no job. Okay? So she becomes, in the common parlance, an unwed mother. You know, just black marks against her all over the place, so to speak. I can't help but read that as influencing this portrayal. So if you do that, what does that mean? What is she saying about her ex? Voldemort's daddy? Okay, I'm not saying that she's saying her daughter is Voldemort. Okay? But what is she doing? She's saying her ex is like Tom Riddle Sr. In other words, a cad, a slime. Okay? Of course, if you take that analogy too far, what else does that mean? It means J.K. Rowling's a witch and pulled the wool over his eyes, so to speak. That's why every analogy fails, so don't take them too far. But it is interesting because this is our, it's not the first, but it's one of our earlier portrayals of a quote-unquote broken family. Where else have we seen one? Broken in the sense that the parents split up. I can only think of one. Hagrid. Hagrid's mother leaves Hagrid's father. Now, she's a giant. He's a human. You know, little problems there. Okay? But other than that, we don't see, in fact, we never see anywhere through 1 through 7, we never see or hear about anybody being divorced. Never. The word is not mentioned anywhere. And yet we do have all kinds of broken families where somebody's dead, okay, or somebody's no longer around, implied usually because they're dead. Okay? Dumbledore, I believe she made the choice to stop giving him the potion. Why? What did she do? She chose love, not magic. Or she chose the real magic, the magic of love. The only problem is she was head over heels in love with him. He, not so much. Perhaps she thought he would stay for the baby's sake. She was wrong. Dumbledore says, "Oh, that's enough for tonight, Harry." Harry's like, "Okay." And it's important I understand all this about Dumbledore, about Voldemort's past. Yep, very important. And it's got something to do with prophecy. Yep, got something to do with prophecy. Okay, all right. And I can tell Ron and Hermione everything, right? He says, "Yeah, I think you can." I don't think it'd be a good idea, however, if word got around how much I know or suspect about Lord Voldemort's secrets. You know, he goes, "No, I'll just Ron and Hermione." And then he notices something. Sitting on one of the little spindle-legged tables that supported so many frail-looking silver instruments was an ugly gold ring set with a large, cracked black stone. Think of this ring, but with this stone, this tiger's eye, instead being black. Harry, that ring, yes. You were wearing it when we visited Professor Slughorn that night. So I was. But isn't it the same ring Marvolo Gaunt showed Ogden? Yep. But have you always had? I acquired it very recently. Few days before I came to fetch you from your aunt and uncle's, in fact. Harry, see, that would be about the same time you injured your hand, right? Which hand is injured? It's his wand hand. Okay? Yeah, Harry, about the same time. How? Good night, Harry. Snape, when he had his guests in Spinner's End, said something to Bellatrix and Narcissa about Dumbledore. Any of you remember it? He said, Dumbledore is not as quick as he was. He suffered a grievous injury in his duel with the Dark Lord. But he didn't suffer any grievous injury with the Dark Lord. What injury is he talking about? His hand. Okay? So that's the proof, I think, that prior to meeting with Bellatrix and Narcissa, Snape and Dumbledore have already met. Snape has already started treating Dumbledore's hand. Okay? And what we discover later on is what happened the moment Dumbledore tried to open the ring. Yeah, and the curse what? The curse is starting to spread. Okay? And we're going to find out later, from the time Dumbledore tries to open the ring, what happens. His clock is ticking. And he has months to live. Okay? Thus, the promise from Snape. Thus, Spinner's End. Okay? Hermione's helping hand. A couple pages in, I don't know, about 5 pages or so. This is around 221, 222. They're talking, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are talking. Some students are starting to leave Hogwarts because their parents are worried and afraid about what's going on. The Patil twins' parents want them to leave. Ron, what? Hogwarts is safer than their homes. Bound to be. We've got Aurors and all those extra protective spells. And we've got Dumbledore. Don't think we've got them all the time. And she looks up at the high table and he's not there again. See, in a British boarding school, Oxford, any of the colleges in Oxford, if you're a boarding student at one of the colleges, Magdalen College or Christ Church, when I do my Harry Potter course in London, one of the field trips is to Oxford, and we go to Christ Church College, which was used for some of the filming for all the Harry Potter films. It's the Great Hall at Christ Church is the room they use as the model for the Great Hall for Hogwarts, okay? And the steps that you always see Ron and Hermione going up and down are the steps up to the Great Hall. Well, we always take a visit there. We go inside, and in the Great Hall there are 3 long tables set out for the students to eat at. Okay? I mean long tables, like probably seat 400 or 500 is what I'm guessing. I mean, there's probably maybe not 400 or 500, maybe 300. Yeah, maybe 50 on each side of the tables. I mean, these are long tables. They're got to be 100 feet long total. Okay, so you have those 3 long tables, and then at the end of the room, raised on like two steps, is a dais. And then you have the horizontal table, and this is where all the professors eat. Okay? And there's probably seating there for, I don't know, 30 or 40. Okay? And the headmaster sits right smack dab in the middle, in a higher, bigger chair. It's like a throne, essentially. Right? So she's looking up there and says, he's not here again. Wonder where he goes. Does Harry know where he goes? No, not yet. He'll find out later. Right? So what is Hermione's helping hand? Keep going. She confronted McLaggen. Why? to get Ron on the Quidditch team. Why else? Well, McClagan kind of has it. He's a jerk, you know. So if you can. But then later on, so she cheats, in other words. She cheats so that her future boyfriend can be on the Quidditch team. Okay? But later on, in the chapter Felix Felicis, she accuses Harry of helping Ron. By giving him what? Liquid luck. A good luck potion. And he doesn't. Ron thinks he does, and because Ron thinks he does, Ron performs better. Okay? They keep talking. This is somewhere around 235, same chapter, Hermione's helping hand. And they talk about being scanned as they went up to Hogwarts. Harry's talking about Malfoy bringing this thing from Borgin and Burt's. And Hermione's like, but how can he have done, Harry? I mean, we were all searched when we arrived, weren't we? Harry, were you? I wasn't. Oh, no, that's right, you were late. Well, Filch ran over all of us with secrecy sensors. So why wasn't Harry run over with the secrecy sensor? It's entirely plot reasons. Because of Book 7. What are the secrecy sensors designed to do? Any dark object would have been found. Well, Harry's about the darkest dark object that there is. Or there's one in him, at least. All right? Silver and opals. Harry's practicing the charms from the Half-Blood Prince's book. And I'm going to skip that, actually. They go on to Hogsmeade. And they're at the Three Broomsticks. Harry, Ron, and Hermione are there. Zabini's there. Harry and them are talking about Mundungus stealing stuff from Sirius's. And Harry's like, well, can't the Order control him? Can't they stop him? Hermione, shh. Right? But it's my stuff, Harry says. I'm going to tell Dumbledore. Hermione, good idea. Ron, what are you staring at? Nothing, says Ron, hastily looking away from the bar. But Harry knew he was trying to catch the eye of the curvy, attractive barmaid, Madame Rosmerta, for whom he had long nursed a soft spot. We haven't talked about her name, Rosmerta. Okay? This is just another example of how detailed Rowling does her research. I mean, none of the names are just happenstance, where she just thinks, oh, this will be a good name. Madame Rosmerta. Rosmerta is the name of a Celtic goddess. She's the goddess of hospitality. She's the goddess of barmaids, essentially. Okay? So that's what she names her barmaid. Hermione, I expect nothing's in the back getting more fire whiskey, said Hermione waspishly. What does she mean by waspishly?
Harshly with a stain.
Yeah, okay. Think of, if you've seen one, two girls/women fighting. What's it like?
It's awesome. It's awesome.
It's not awesome. It's real. What? Claws out, man. That's waspishly. Her claws are out. He's like, why? Little bit of jealousy here on Hermione's part. Okay? Ron ignored this jibe, sipping his drink in what he evidently considered to be a dignified silence. He's not going to respond. Okay? Harry thinks of Sirius, and then when Harry says, shall we go back up to school? Hermione says, shall we go back up to school? They nod, and Harry's thoughts stray to Ginny. We're not told exactly where they go, but they're straying. Meanwhile, Katie Bell's out there, and what happens to her? Is it that she gets greedy? She touches the necklace. Okay. And Harry thinks it has something to do with Malfoy. Was Malfoy there? No. But he thinks it has something to do with Malfoy. Nobody believes him, right? The secret riddle, he tells Dumbledore. Dumbledore says, okay, don't worry about it. He tells McGonagall. Harry's right, though, right? It did have something to do with Malfoy. It's the reason why Madame Rosmerta was in the back room. Okay? She was under an Imperius curse. So, the secret riddle, chapter 13. Harry's off for another lesson with Dumbledore. Phineas Nigellus is, barking away from the pictures. And 260 or so, maybe 261, they're talking about Katie Bell and stuff. And Dumbledore says, let's get on to our lesson, Harry. You will remember, I'm sure, that we left the tale of Lord Voldemort's beginnings at the point where the handsome muggle Tom Riddle had abandoned his witch wife. Okay? He says, now, we know Merope was left in London. How do you know she was in London? It's because of the evidence of one Caractacus Burke. He swills the pensive, and they pop in. And what do we see? We see Merope do what? She pawns the locket. Salazar Slytherin's locket. This thing is 1,000 years old. Okay? For 10 galleons. What should this thing normally be worth?
10,000 gallons?
Yeah. Or priceless. Right?
That's as much as Harry's textbook costs.
Say that again?
Harry's textbook, like potions, was 9 gallons.
Yeah. And it's a beat up old book. It's not even a nice first edition, good cover, with Snake's scrawl with it. She didn't seem to have any idea how much it was worth. Happy to get 10 galleons for it. Best bargain we ever made, says Burke. Dumbledore shakes the pensive again. Harry, he only gave her 10 galleons. Caractacus Burke was not famed for his generosity. Well, he's not being generous, right? I mean, he's running a pawn shop, essentially. You take something really nice into a pawn shop. You take a big old 3 or 4 carat diamond ring. They're not going to give you, what? Retail value. You're going to get maybe 20 cents on the dollar. Or a galleon. Harry, but she could do magic. She could have got food and everything for herself by magic, couldn't she? Does Dumbledore say, well, no, Harry, as Hermione's going to tell you in the next book, you can't whip up food out of nothing. You have to have something to... Okay, so she couldn't find a rat in London, turn it into chicken or something. Or cook it some way that it would be edible. Dumbledore, maybe she could. But I think when her husband abandoned her, Merope stopped using magic. I do not think she wanted to be a witch any longer. Why? It was because of being a witch, she thinks that he abandoned her. So I don't want to be a witch anymore. Does that mean that she's thinking, I'll go back to him and tell him I'm not a witch anymore? And look, I got all cleaned up and... No. She doesn't want to be a witch any longer. Why else? What else? She doesn't want to live any longer. It's also possible her unrequited love and the attendant despair sapped her of her powers. Notice, despair can destroy a witch or wizard's ability to do magic. In any case, as you're about to see, Merope refused to raise her wand even to save her own life. She wouldn't even stay alive for her son. Notice what Dumbledore has said. She wouldn't raise her wand to save her own life. Harry interprets that. She wouldn't even stay alive for her son. What logical step has Harry just made? Okay, that comes in just a moment. He leaps from her to, yeah, but there's somebody else dependent upon her. Dumbledore, could you possibly be feeling sorry for Lord Voldemort? Notice how quickly that comes up. Harry, are you feeling, I don't know, let's channel Gandalf. Pity and mercy for Lord Voldemort? No, says Harry, quickly. Why quickly? How dare you even suggest I would feel sorry for Voldemort? Why does he say it quickly? Because he is. He is feeling sorry for Lord Voldemort. Why? Because Harry's thinking of himself, too. She had a choice, not like my mother. Move aside, silly girl. He heard Voldemort's voice say that. Move aside. No, not Harry. Take me instead. Move. He has to say it, if I remember right, it's like 3 times. Every time she doesn't move, she's what? Choosing to stay. Choosing to sacrifice herself. Your mother had a choice too. Did you have a question? Yeah, you, because you kind of had your hand. I didn't know. He says, your mother had a choice too. Maripay Riddle chose death in spite of a son who needed her. But don't judge her too harshly, Harry. She was weakened by long suffering, and she never had your mother's courage. Well, what else did she not have?
A husband who loved her.
She didn't have a husband who loved her, who was with her all the time, who was with her until almost her dying breath. He died just before she did. Where are we going? And where do they go? Dumbledore doesn't tell Harry. He says, no, I'm going to take you in one of my memories. But he doesn't tell Harry where they're going. What does Harry see? The orphanage. Who runs the orphanage? What's the woman's name? Mrs. Cole. How else can you spell Cole? Yeah. Because this kind of describes her. She's hard, cold, bitter. Okay? And she's a bit of a drunk. Describe the orphanage. It's like right out of Dickens's Oliver Twist, man. It's grimy, it's dirty. You've got kids who are maybe not malnourished, but almost. Okay. How do I know she's a drunk? Well, look at 262, 263. Dumbledore slides her a paper and then does a little charm on her so her eyes go in and out of focus. And she goes, oh, this is perfectly all right. May I offer you a glass of gin? Very much, Dumbledore says, thank you. It soon became clear Mrs. Cole was no novice when it came to gin drinking. Pouring both of them a generous measure, she drained her own glass in one. Just whoosh. Kind of like Aunt Marge. Okay? Just throws them back. And then she gets another. Okay? And so they talk about Tom, and Dumbledore finally meets him. She says there have been incidents with Tom. Hard to catch him at it. That is no proof. Billy Stubbs' rabbit. Well, Tom said he didn't do it. And I don't see how he could have done. But even so, it didn't hang itself from the rafters, did it? That's kind of creepy. Little Billy Stubbs' okay, is it a real rabbit? Or is it a stuffed rabbit? We're never actually told. If it's a stuffed rabbit, okay. But if it's a real rabbit and they go by and they see the rabbit, twitching as it's hanging from the rafters. But I'm jiggered if I know how he got up there to do it. All I know is he and Billy argued the day before as she takes another swig of gin. Maybe there's a reason she drinks so much gin. She's living in a house with little Satan and, things are going on around her. Okay? They went out to the seaside one year. And, Amy Benson and Dennis Bishop, they were never quite right afterwards. Well, what did Tom do to them? They went into a cave and something happened in there, but Dumbledore says, I'm not going to be keeping him permanently. I mean, he's going to come home holidays and such. No, that's okay. So Dumbledore goes off and talks to Tom Riddle. And what do we see in this little interview? I mean, it surprises Harry. Dumbledore tells him, you're a wizard. No doubt. He accepts it immediately. Why? Because Dumbledore uses what word to describe him? You're special. Okay? He asks Dumbledore to do magic. Dumbledore does. He commands Dumbledore, tell the truth. Doesn't work. He wants to know where he can get one of them. A wand. So, Dumbledore tells him, before you can come to Hogwarts, what does Tom Riddle have to do? Two things.
Take back all of the things he's rightfully acquired.
He's got to take all the stuff he stole, and the harder part, he's got to apologize. It's easy to return stuff, especially if you return it surreptitiously, so it just appears on their beds. It's a lot harder to go up to them and say, sorry, shouldn't have done that. Right? So they come back out. Harry, wow, he believed it much quicker than I did. I didn't believe Hagrid at first. Yeah, he was. Dumbledore says he was ready. Harry, did you know then? Dumbledore, did I know I had just met the most dangerous dark wizard of all time? No. Interesting little mind game. What if he did know? Well, Dumbledore said, come here, Tom. Let's go outside and go for a little walk. And Tom disappears. Don't know. Don't think so. He says no, but I was certainly intrigued by him. But what does Dumbledore do in that little interview? Okay. He does prove to him he can do magic. What else does he do in that proving? Tom's a little bit afraid of Albus Dumbledore. This is important because Dumbledore is going to refer to that in not very many pages in the chapter Lord Voldemort's Request. He's going to say, time is long gone when I can make a dresser burst into flame and scare you. But if I could, Tom, if I could. I mean, he's saying there, if I could do something that would frighten you into becoming a better person, I would. But I can't. Okay? So what else, Harry? What else have you picked up on? Harry, he was a Parselmouth. Yep. Rare ability. One supposedly connected, Dumbledore says, with the dark arts. Although, as we know, there are Parselmouths among the great and the good too. Really? What other Parselmouths that we know of are quote-unquote great and good? Harry. He's it. Who are the only other known Parselmouths? Tom Riddle, Morfingaunt, Marvologaunt. Do we ever actually see Maripe? I don't think we see her speak it, but we see her respond. She understands it. Okay. Salazar Slytherin. And Harry. But Harry isn't born with that ability. We know. Okay? He has it because of something else. So Dumbledore says, okay, Harry, time's running. He's got to continue his lesson. Did you notice how he reacted when I mentioned that another shared his name, Tom? Who is the other? Tom, the bartender at the Leaky Cauldron. Yeah, he showed his contempt for anything that tied him to other people, anything that made him ordinary. Even then, he wished to be different, separate, notorious. You also notice something else, right, Harry? He was already, that is, at 11, highly self-sufficient, secretive, and friendless. He didn't want help or companionship on his trip to Diagon Alley. He preferred to operate alone. Adult Voldemort is the same. You'll hear many of his Death Eaters claiming they are in his confidence. That they alone are close to him. That they even understand him. They are deluded. Lord Voldemort has never had a friend, nor I do believe that he has ever wanted one. I'm going to back up for just a moment about the thing with Tom Riddle Sr. Okay? And Tom Riddle Jr. Rowling has said, should I talk about this now? Well, I'll refer to it. Rowling has said that the reason Tom Riddle Jr. understands nothing of love. Okay? Dumbledore has said, Harry, you have a power that that Voldemort does not have. It is that power that is kept locked in the Department of Mysteries at all times. In other words, each of those other rooms in the Department of Mysteries, people go in and study those things, right? They go in and study time. They go in and study the mind. They go in and study natural phenomena. They go in and study death. But they don't go in the room of love. The door is kept locked all the time. Doesn't make any sense as to why it's there then, but never mind. Rowling has said the reason Tom Riddle does not understand love at all is because, she has said this in an interview, I guess, in Pottermore. It's because of how he was conceived. He wasn't conceived in love. He was conceived how? By force, essentially. His conception was essentially a rape. Okay? It was Maripay's rape of Tom Riddle because of the love potion. It was against his will. Therefore, she argues, essentially, Voldemort cannot know and experience love. Think about that idea for a moment. That is a repellent, repugnant, vile idea. Because what does it then say if you take from that idea from the book? If you take what she says as being the truth of the situation and apply it then to real life, it means anybody conceived not out of love. What? Is unable to love. Okay, I mean, you could go to the extreme and say, okay, so that means anybody conceived in rape is unable to love. Well, okay, if that's the case, then I think you'd see an awful lot of people who are currently against abortion for rape to say, yep, automatically, just clean them out. Okay? But what else does that extend to? One night stands, which I think almost everybody would say doesn't really have anything to do with love, has everything to do with lust. Does that mean anybody conceived as a result of a one-night stand is a little Voldemort? Unable to love? I don't mean little Voldemort in the evil part. I mean unable to love. How many people does that include? This is why I say this is a vile, morally repellent and repugnant idea. Because it essentially says love is ultimately biological. That's it. It is something passed on like blue eyes, or blonde hair, or brown skin. And if you don't have it when you're born, you don't have it. So does that mean all these people not conceived in love are sociopaths? Because that's what Voldemort is. He is a sociopath. And psychopath. But socio definitely. Leave that alone. Next chapter. Oh, Harry goes on. Dumbledore says he's never had a friend. Lastly, what else, Harry? Come on, I know you're sleepy. Got to get this last point in. He collected trophies. Right? Trophies. Keep this in mind. And now it's time for bed. Harry notices the ring is no longer on the table. The ring's gone. Harry says, very astute, Harry. And he goes off. Chapter 14, Felix Felicis. Let's see here. Um, 287, 288, somewhere between there. Ron and Ginny have a big row over Ginny and Dean Thomas making out in the hallways. Okay? Ginny, right. Let's get this straight once and for all. It's none of your business who I go out with or what I do with them. Ron, yes it is. You think I want people saying my sister's Notice he doesn't get to finish it. What? Draws her wand. A what? Now what does Ron know when Ginny draws her wand? Better back up. He doesn't mean anything, Ginny, says Harry. Though the monster was roaring its approval of Ron's words. The monster was roaring its approval of Ron's words. What monster? No, it's not the guy. It's something in Harry. Oh, yes, he does, she says. Just because he's never snogged anyone in his life, just because the best kiss he's ever had is from an Auntie Muriel. Ew. Because we're going to meet dear old Auntie Muriel in the next book. About as foul a hag as anybody's ever seen. Shut your mouth, says Ron. He means that both literally and figuratively. Literally, shut your mouth. Figuratively, quit kissing. No, I will not. I've seen you with Flem. Okay, who is Flem again? Fleur Delacour, who is Bill's girlfriend. Ew. I've seen you with Flem, hoping she'll kiss you on the cheek every time you see her. It's pathetic. Borderline incest getting there, you know. If you went out and got a bit of snogging done yourself, you wouldn't mind so much that everyone else does it. What's she essentially saying? Ron, you need to go get laid. Not quite that far, but Ron pulls out his wand now, too. He's, okay, you don't know what you're talking about, Ron roared, trying to get a clear shot at Ginny around Harry. Notice, Harry hasn't been between them before, but now Harry is, who is now standing in front of her with his arms outstretched. Like this? Is he reaching for her? Is this his one shot? He's thinking, I'll do it now. Oh, she has her mouth open. Or is he like this? And is he facing her, or does he have her back to her and facing Ron? Notice what he's doing, by the way. He's shielding her. He's making a cross over her. Okay? Just because I don't do it in public, Ron says. Ginny screams. Been kissing Pigwidgeon, you know, his owl. Just. Or have you got a picture of Auntie Muriel stashed under your pillow? You. The streak of orange light flew into Harry's left arm, missed Ginny by inches. Harry pushes Ron up against the wall. Don't be stupid. Harry snogged Cho Chang, shouts Ginny. Hermione snogged Victor. It's only you who acts like it's something disgusting, Ron. And that's because you've got about as much experience as a 12-year-old. She storms away. Harry lets go of Ron. Ron goes the other way. And what does Ron do pretty soon after this? Lavender brown. Describe lavender. Okay, the guys are going. Girls are, the women in here are giving me no feedback. Describe lavender. Okay.
I take offense.
I was going to say.
Excuse me.
Preppy cheerleader.
She's the kind of person who has to be in a relationship.
Kind of person who has to be in a relationship. Airhead, I heard. Okay? In other words, real nice here, but not a lot behind it. Okay? Let's just be nice. We won't say anymore. So Felix Felicis is what? Hermione thinking Harry gives Ron the good luck draft. Okay? Chapter 15, the Unbreakable Vow. Oh yeah, let's pick 2, yeah. Somewhere around 312. No, take that back. Can't do my own math. Yeah, probably around 312 or so. .309 or so, somewhere between 309 and 312. Romilda Vane comes up to Harry and she says, "Hi, Harry. Fancy a gilly water?" Hermione gave him a "what did I tell you" look over her shoulder. Harry, "No thanks, don't like it much." "Well, take these anyway," said Romilda, thrusting a box into his hands. "Chocolate cauldrons. They've got fire whiskey in them." She's trying to get me drunk. "My gran sent them to me, but I don't like..." She's 16 years old. What's her grandmother do sending her spiked candy, you know? What a crazy world these kids live in these days. Hermione, "Told you. Sooner you ask someone, sooner they'll all leave you alone. And you can..." What? It's left dash. But her face suddenly turned blank. She had just spotted Ron and Lavender, who were entwined in the same armchair. She says, "Good night, Harry." Harry goes upstairs. Okay. Later on, he runs into Luna. Actually, we're going to skip all of that. He goes off to Slughorn's party. Who else is at Slughorn's party? Hermione, Ginny, Luna, Neville, Draco, Zabini, Blaze. Okay. And we see, this is around 318, we see Trelawney stop Harry. "Harry Potter, my dear boy, the rumors, the stories, the chosen one. But why have you not returned to divination? For you, of all people, the subject is of the utmost importance." And Harry's like, "Yeah, and it's all a bunch of BS, you know." And Slughorn interrupts her and says, "Well, we all think our own subject's most important, right? Do you think McGonagall thinks Transfiguration is most important? I kind of do. Snape thinks Defense Against the Dark Arts, when he's teaching that, is the most important. When he's teaching potions, it's that, etc. Hagrid thinks Care of Magical Creatures, most important thing you can learn if you want to be a zookeeper, you know." He says, "But I don't think I've ever known such a natural at potions." He looks at Harry. "Instinctive, you know, like his mother." Now that's interesting, because we've not heard much about James and Lily at school. Why, even Severus. And he links Lily Evans with Severus Snape. Why?
Because weren't they friends or whatever?
Yeah, but we don't know that yet. That comes out, this is what makes the books, reading the books a second time, so much more enjoyable than the first time. Because you get to the end of book 7, you go, "Oh!" And then you go back and reread everything, and it starts to add a lot of things up. Snape's worst memory, book 5, happened when?
When he was in school with Harry's father.
Okay, when he was in school with Harry's father and mother. But when did that occur? Their 5th year. When? At the end. They had just taken their owls. It's like between end of year exams and end of year feasts. I mean, it's like the last week of school. Okay? And we come to learn later about Severus's friendship, Snape's friendship with Lily Evans. They were very close friends when? When they started Hogwarts. 1st year, 2nd year, 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year. What did Sirius tell Harry, Ron, and Hermione about Snape back in the cave outside Hogsmeade? Snape knew what when he came to Hogwarts? He knew more dark magic than most 7th years did upon leaving. Okay? Well, if he and Lily are such good friends, doesn't it stand to reason? Or can we infer that they helped each other out? At least through their 5th year? Because what happens at the end of their 5th year? I don't need help from filthy little mudbloods like her. Fine. No more help. Okay? I'm not saying that they have been helping each other, but they're as close, they were as close friends as who? Harry and Hermione? How much has Hermione helped Harry with his schoolwork? Yeah, she's written some of it, guys. And what she hasn't written, Harry copied from. Slughorn throws an arm around him and scoops Snape into the conversation. Snape, really? I never had the impression I managed to teach Potter anything at all. Slughorn, natural ability then. Meaning, well, he gets it from his mother. See now, that coming into Snape's ears, that has got to be like burning coals, man. It's got to be painful. Because he remembers Lily. Why, I don't think even you, Severus. Really? His eye still boring into Harry. Why? Yeah, he's trying to, read that mind there. Slughorn, what other subjects you taking, Harry? And Harry goes through them. All the subjects to be an Auror. Luna, I don't think you should be an Auror. And she goes off about something weird. Harry kind of extricates himself, and he sees Malfoy. And he sees the way Snape is looking at Malfoy, as though they're both angry, and so Snape's afraid. Then he overhears Malfoy, and Malfoy says to Slughorn, responding to Slughorn's comment about having known Malfoy's grandfather. He always spoke very highly of you, sir. Said you were the best potion maker he'd ever known. Slam! On Snape. Even though his grandfather may have never known Snape, this is Malfoy's way of getting a little dig. Harry stared at Malfoy. It's not the sucking up that intrigued him. He'd seen him do that at all. He said this is the first time he'd seen Malfoy up close. Dark shadows under his eyes, distinctly grayish tinge. Snape, I'd like a word with you, Draco. I am his head of house. I shall decide how hard or otherwise to be. Follow me, Draco. And so, Snape leads the way. And Harry tells Luna, I got to use the bathroom. So he follows them. And Harry eavesdrops on their entire conversation. You cannot afford mistakes, Draco, because if you are expelled, I didn't have anything to do with it, all right? I hope you're telling me the truth. Clumsy, foolish. Who suspects me? I didn't do it, okay? That bell girl must have had an enemy no one knows about. Don't look at me like that, which is the same way, I think, he was looking at Harry. Snape was. I know what you're doing. I'm not stupid. It won't work. I can stop you. Aunt Bellatrix has been teaching you occlumency. Okay, so if Malfoy can stop Snape, must Snape really be that accomplished to the Gillimans? I mean, does Malfoy really seem that adept at anything else? Does he get top of his marks and everything? We're not told. We never see his owls. Okay? It's just kind of odd to me. What thoughts are you trying to conceal from your master, Draco? I'm not trying to conceal anything from him. I just don't want you butting in. Your master, Snape. Why? He's one, his head of house. And two, master comes from the Latin magister. It's the word from which we get like master of arts. Okay? It meant in Latin teacher. Snape is saying, what are you hiding from me? Draco intentionally turns the tables. Says, I'm not hiding anything from my real master. You, what does he mean when he says, I don't want you butting in? You are nothing to me. Harry's like, what? I've never heard Malfoy speak to Snape like this. He'd always shown respect. So is that why you've been avoiding me this term? You have feared my interference? You realize, had anybody else failed to come to my office when I told them repeatedly to be there, Draco, would put me in detention. Report me to Dumbledore. What's he mean? Yeah. F you, buddy. I'm not doing it. You know perfectly well I don't wish to do either. Then stop telling me to come to your office. In other words, you keep telling me to come, I'm not going to. Definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Snape, listen to me. I'm trying to help you. I swore to your mother I would protect you. I made the unbreakable vow. Well, looks like you're going to have to break it then. I don't need your protection. It's my job. He gave it to me. I've got a plan. It's going to work. What's your plan? None of your business. If you can tell me, I can help you. I've got all the assistance I need. Who's his assistants? Snape thinks. Crabbe and Goyle. That's about as much as they speak. You know. If your friends Crabbe and Goyle intend to pass their defense against the dark arts owl this time around, what year are they? They're retaking it. I don't know if it means they're still fifth years, or if they get to just retake defense against the dark arts. Why did they not pass it? Well, they didn't have Harry to teach it, first of all, and they had Umbridge teaching it. Okay? They will need to work a little harder than they are. What does it matter? Defense against them. It's all a joke. Like any of us need protecting. Yeah, but it's an act that is crucial to success. Snape says, where do you think I would have been all these years if I had not known how to act? Who does it sound like Draco's been talking to, which Snape has already alluded to? His aunt, you know. Listen to me. You're being incautious, wandering around at night, getting yourself caught. And if you're placing your reliance on assistants like Crabbe and Goyle, they're not the better ones. I've got other people, too. Then confide in me. I know what you're up to. You want to steal my glory. Another pause. Now you're speaking like a child. I understand your father's capture and imprisonment has upset you. And Harry has to leave. Okay? Who else does he have working for him? Well, Borgin and Burks. Fenrir Greyback. Is that somebody you really want to have working on your side? Okay. Let's go on a little further. So, Harry's overheard the conversation about an unbreakable vow. Notice, I'm going to stop in about 10-15 minutes so you guys can do these evaluations, as long as I remember. Harry asked Ron, what's it mean? Well, you can't break an unbreakable vow. Worked that much out for myself, thanks. What happens if you do? Well, you die. Fred and George tried to get me to make one when I was about 5. I nearly did too. I was holding hands with Fred and everything when Dad found us. He went mental. Okay, what do you have to have in order to do the unbreakable vow? A wand. What else do you have to have? Knowledge. The words of the spell. Is this stuff you're going to find in the Tales of Beetle the Bard? The kind of childhood reading? No. This is what kind of magic? It's not necessarily dark, but it is advanced. 7-year-olds can do this? Well, when they were 5, they could transfigure a teddy bear into a living giant spider. Should Fred and George really be running a joke shop, or should they be running the Ministry of Magic? I mean, or the whole world, for that matter. Right? So, I'm going to skip a bit. They're at the Weasleys. Let's see, how many pages? 20 pages on. And Harry, one evening, is talking with Mr. Weasley and Lupin. And they're talking about Stan Shunpike. Now, where have we met Stan Shunpike? Okay, on the night bus, book 2, book 3, zit-faced, pimply 17-year-old in book 3. So 18, 19, 20, 21 now. Okay? And he's at Azkaban. Mr. Weasley says, about 3:30 or so, I know Dumbledore's tried appealing directly to Scrimgeour about Stan. I mean, anybody who's actually interviewed him agrees he's about as much a Death Eater as this Setsma. Top levels, however, want it to look like they're making progress. In other words, it's all about what?
Image.
Appearance, image, public relations. Okay? This is all top secret. Harry, I won't say anything. But then he asks Mr. Weasley, remember the thing I talked to you about before we left for Hogwarts? He says, I checked, Harry. I went throughout the Malfoy house. Nothing there that shouldn't have been there. Yeah, I know. But this is something different. And he tells about the conversation between Malfoy and Snape. Mr. Weasley asks, has it ever occurred to you, Harry, that Snape was simply pretending? Notice he doesn't say Professor Snape, Harry. He doesn't have the respect for him Dumbledore does. Pretending to offer help so that he could find out what Malfoy's up to? Yeah, I thought you'd say that. But how do we know? How do we know? How do we know what? Okay. How do we know that Snape's good? That's what Harry means. How do we know that Snape's good? It isn't our business to know, says Lupin unexpectedly. In other words, he turns around. He interjects himself into the conversation. It's Dumbledore's business. Dumbledore trusts Severus. That ought to be good enough for all of us. What's the logical argument Lupin is making, but he leaves out a step or two? Dumbledore trusts Snape. And then he jumps to the conclusion. That ought to be good enough for us. What's he left out? We trust Dumbledore. Okay? But say Dumbledore's wrong. Harry says. People have said it many times. It comes down to whether or not you trust Dumbledore's judgment. I do. Therefore, I trust Severus. Is it only down to Dumbledore's judgment? Think about it for a moment. Lupin's going to talk in just a minute. He's going to say, the entire year I taught at Hogwarts, what did Snape do? He made the Wolfsbane potion, and he made it perfectly, every time. He didn't have to. Harry's, yeah, but Dumbledore was there. He could have been breathing over his shoulder, right? What other evidence? Book 1, at the end, Hermione. Book 2, Book 3, Book 4, Hermione keeps saying, Snape does what? All throughout Book 1, what did Snape do? Dumbledore tells Harry.
He intervenes on, to keep Quirrell.
He was protecting you all year long. Okay? Harry, but Dumbledore can make mistakes again. And then he looks at Lupin. Do you honestly like Snape? What's he equating? Trusting with liking. I neither like nor dislike Severus. No, Harry, I'm speaking the truth. We'll never be bosom friends, perhaps. After all that happened between James and Sirius and Severus, there's too much bitterness there. Notice, James and Sirius and Severus. What about Remus Lupin? He wasn't just an innocent bystander in all those events. What happened in Snape's worst memory? Lupin is sitting there, leaning against a tree, reading a book, and he sees. Okay? Which one says it to the other one? Is it James that says it to Sirius? Look who's coming. Snippets. And we're told Lupin gets a frown on his face. Have you ever seen this or read this or heard this? This is a quote attributed to an 18th century political philosopher named Edmund Burke. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Why was Hitler able to rise to power? Is it because the vast majority of the German populace said, yes, kill the Jews. They are all the problems in the world? No. It's because the vast majority of the German populace did nothing. That's it. Why was, Mao Zedong able to come to power in China? Because the vast majority, what are we talking about when we're talking about China in, say, 1950? We're talking hundreds of millions did nothing. It took fewer than a million to turn China into what it became. It took far fewer than that to turn Cambodia, North Korea, Cuba, etc. Right? All that's necessary is for good men to sit on their hands and say, not my fight, not my battle. Lupin, I don't forget, and he goes on and talks about the Wolfbane potion. Okay? Lupin says, you're determined to hate him, Harry. And he says, in fact, Harry, you inherited an old prejudice, which we can't blame you, with Sirius as your godfather and James as your father. What's the problem with that argument, however?
He didn't know either of them long enough to pick up prejudice.
He didn't know James at all to pick up a prejudice from James. He knew Sirius for how long? 2.5 years? Did he really inherit that much prejudice from Sirius in 2.5 years?
Even during those years, he was pretty much estranged from him.
Exactly. And also, even then, he saw, at the end of Book 4, Sirius and Snape do what? Work together. Not happily, not lovingly, but willingly. Okay? This question, how do we know, is going to become very important, because earlier on that page, Lupin and Arthur said, we trust Dumbledore. Trust isn't knowing. Trust is what? Belief. And so we see juxtapose this idea, how do we know means what? I want what? Proof. I want proof. Incontrovertible proof that Snape is good. Harry's going to go off very shortly, another trip with Dumbledore, and he's going to say, and you still trust? And Dumbledore's going to say, Harry, you've asked me that question a lot of times, and I've been very patient and tolerant so far in answering it. And the implication is, don't press your luck. Yes, I still trust him. Okay? But for Harry, Dumbledore's trust is not proof. He wants, like Snape has the dark mark scar, he wants the other mark scar, the good mark scar on the other arm to show that he's really good now. Okay? Snape doesn't have that, does he? All right, we'll stop there so that you can do these evaluations. Finish this title, Half-Blood Prince, for next week.